read and understand the significance of Sophoclean drama, tragedy, King Oedipus, let's compare it with another masterpiece, Shakespeare's Marc Antony's speech. However, our purpose is not to say that Shakespeare's Marc Antony's speech is a copy of King Oedipus, but our purpose is to understand how Shakespeare, another great writer, a playwright, had inspiration from King Oedipus, and how he created this Marc Antony, another great piece. When we compare, in this comparison, we need to assume ourselves as the Greek spectators who lived in 5th century BC. We need to assume that when we go to the theater with all these social ideas which have narrated to us Oedipus legend, and we go there again with these ideas, prejudices, preconcepts that Oedipus is the most horrible, the most mean, the most, let's say, the worthless man that we have ever met or dreamt of. You may find some sort of similarity here. In Marc Antony's speech, Antony addresses the Roman citizens. Before Marc Antony addresses them, Brutus and Casca, those who stabbed him to death, stabbed Caesar to death, have already addressed the people and said that Caesar is an ambitious king, ambitious monarch. He tried to become an ambitious monarch. That's why they had to kill him. So when Marc Antony begins to address them, they hate Caesar. Here too, when we begin to watch the drama, we don't love him. We don't love Oedipus. We hate him. We have similar, let's say, attitude to our attitude to Oedipus, and then Roman citizens' attitude to Julius Caesar are similar. So both Marc Antony and Sophocles have to use some strategies to change our mindset. Okay, let's see how they are going to do it. Because let's say tale-tellers, it means our elders, have told us about Oedipus. When telling the story, they pretend, our let's say our elders, maybe our parents, maybe clergy, they have told us Oedipus as the most horrible, brutish, mean, worthless man. At the same time, they pretend to be moral heroes. The same thing, as you know, happens in, Marc Antony, when Marc Antony begins his speech. Okay. So for us, our elders, they are the tale-tellers, those who told tales about Oedipus, and their Casca and other Romans, senators, are the tale-tellers. Now what we want Sophocles to do, since we hate Oedipus already, is to further hammer him, further torture him, and bury him deep in the soil. That's what the Roman citizens want Antony to do, not to praise Caesar, but to bury him. That's what Marc Antony in the beginning of his speech says. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Sophocles may have to say the same thing. I come to bury Oedipus, but not to praise him. That's what we want him to do. Okay, and then, however, we have this common knowledge. What's that common knowledge? That evil that men do lives after them, and the good is often interred with their bone. This is what Marc Antony says. මිනිස්සු කරන හොඳ මිනිස්සුත් එක්ක වැළලී යනවා මිනිස්සු කරන නරක පමණක් පවතිනවා. So this is what has happened to both Caesar and Oedipus. We have not heard of anything good that Oedipus has done. Any good quality, any human potentiality of this man. For us, he's the most mean, worthless man. There is one thing that we need to know. We usually punish a person for the offense that is said to have done. But there we don't consider how he happened to do it. What caused him to do that offense. We don't consider, we don't give him a chance. We don't give him a chance to present his own side of the story. We listen to one side of the story and we give the punishment. That's what has happened to both. But if we give them a chance, to both Caesar and Oedipus, they may have to tell their own side of the story. Okay. Let's see the next one. Once you watch the drama or read the drama and then listen to this, Marc Antony's speech, they are not we. Let's consider them as we as Roman citizens. Some sort of reversal happens. When we look at this word reversal, we may remember something else. That is, why reversal, when we apply it to the drama Oedipus, what you understand is something similar, again something bit different. That is, we relate it to the central action of the drama. That is, okay, now the central action of the drama is finding the killer or identifying Oedipus as the killer. So what we mean by reversal is, okay, let's say first Creon comes from Delphic temple with the god's message, and then we feel tensed because we are given a promise here by the playwright. Okay, now you are going to know who the killer is, but something accidental happens and then we don't get a chance to identify Oedipus as the killer. The killer goes undetected. We miss a chance there. And then again, when Tiresias comes to tell who the killer is, we are dead sure that he's going to reveal Oedipus as the killer. But it doesn't happen. Instead, they begin to fight. So these two places, what happens in these two places, I understand as reversal. And then again, there is another moment in which you find this reversal. It is in the dialogue between Oedipus and Jocasta. Jocasta comes to console him, and we want her to console him, because by the scene of Oedipus, let's say maybe it should be the fifth scene, the dialogue between Oedipus and Jocasta. Now we have already passed several incidents, and we have come to know, we have been exposed to Oedipus' speech, what Oedipus says and what Oedipus does. So you should have already begun to love him whenever he met Jocasta. And Jocasta wants to console him, even we want her to console him to get consoled. But our expectation is not fulfilled because it doesn't happen. Instead of Jocasta console him, Jocasta make him more worried, because accidentally she refers to a place, a tree road, where her husband was killed by outland robbers. So Oedipus remembers a similar incident, and then instead of getting consolation, he becomes more worried. So this is another reversal. And then you can see, okay, there is another place as well where you can find this reversal. It is Corinthian messenger coming to meet Oedipus with the message that Polybus is dead. Now he can go and be the king there. So this is reversal. But here what we mean is role reversal. Changing our attitude, bit similar but different. How our attitudes get changed here as a result of something happens here. Okay, now let's see. Now moral hero. In the end of both King Oedipus, watching the drama Oedipus, and I mean here Romans, after listening to Mark Antony's speech, our attitudes change. Roman citizens' attitudes change, attitudes to Caesar, and Brutus and Casca, their attitudes change, even our attitudes too. Prejudices against Oedipus change. And as a result, a moral zero. In the beginning, Oedipus is a moral zero. There, Mark Antony's speech, Julius Caesar is a moral zero. These moral zeros become moral heroes in the end. And then the other one, the moral heroes become moral zeros. In relation to King Oedipus, the moral heroes are those socio-cultural attitudes that govern us, that ruled us, that dominated us. What happens to those rules? What happens to our values and cultural values and standards? And those clergy who inculcated these values into us. So what happened to them? They become, these moral heroes become moral zeros. And a moral zero become a moral hero. The same thing happens in the end of Mark Antony's speech as well, because Mark Antony raises Julius Caesar from the status of a moral zero to a moral hero. Similarly, he downgrades Casca and Brutus from moral zeros to moral heroes, to moral zeros. Now let's read Mark Antony's speech so that we can get a good understanding of this, because we cannot read the whole drama, King Oedipus. Instead, let's read Mark Antony's speech. Friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. Now look at, pay your attention to this term, verb, lend me. Why does he use lend me instead of listen to me? Because already Brutus and Casca have addressed Roman citizens, and now they have almost changed. They are not in a situation to listen to somebody else. They have given their ears in lease to those conspirators. So he asked them to lend me your ears. Just for a moment, lend me your ears. Listen to me very carefully. I have something to tell you. I have something to tell you. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. That's what Roman citizens want him to do. Not to praise Caesar, but to bury him. This is what we want Sophocles to do. Not to praise Oedipus, but to bury him. Because we don't want to listen to anything good about this man, because we know everything about him. He's the most mean, most worthless, brutish man. So he doesn't have even a speck of, an iota of human potential. So he needs to be buried. That's what we want Sophocles to do. Okay, now let's see what they are going to do. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. However, though he says that he come to bury Caesar, he reminds them that there is something that generally happens, which is the good things that people do are buried with them. Only their evils live thereafter. So that is what happens to Oedipus. We know it. We are not worried about knowing the good things that he has done, his great human potentials. It's similar with Julius Caesar. So let it be with Caesar. Okay. So let it be with Caesar. The same thing may happen to Caesar as well. The noble Brutus had told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it was a grievous fault. So Brutus told you that Caesar was ambitious. If he was ambitious, as Brutus says, that's a grievous fault, and he grievously responded to it because those people stabbed him to death. Won't you think that the same thing happened to Oedipus? And he was said to be the most brutish, most mean, worthless man. And what happened to him? He equally responded to it by blinding his eyes. So that's what happened, and thereafter he was banished. So both grievously answered. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. Okay, so here he says, Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. Okay, now he has come with the permission from Caesar and Casca to address them. Now, does he have freedom to tell them anything good that Caesar has done? No, he has no permission. Caesar, Casca and Brutus have not given him that permission. They have given him permission so that he can bury Caesar. Okay, it's similar with Sophocles. Sophocles comes to address us with the permission by our socio-cultural values and standards. Can he say something against those socio-cultural values and standards? No, we don't allow them. The people don't allow them. He doesn't have that freedom. It is with their permission that he has come here, but not to praise him, but yet to bury him. Marc Antony continues his speech. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious. He was my friend. So Julius is, as Marc Antony says, he is his friend, a faithful friend to him. Here too, in Oedipus, it seems to us that Sophocles is a friend of Oedipus. When I say friend of Oedipus, I would say it in a different term, with a different interpretation, because it is only a friend who can understand him. Being an opponent, being an antagonist, while hating him, you cannot understand him. In order to understand him, you need to become a friend. It's only a friend who can understand a person. Okay, in that sense, Sophocles himself is a friend to Oedipus. But Brutus says he was ambitious. Here, Brutus says he's ambitious. There, again, people say that Oedipus is worthless, most mean, brutish man. And Brutus is an honorable man. That's what Marc Antony says. There again, you say that those values are, you revere or respect, worship those social standards and values as correct. Marc Antony continues his speech. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransom did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? In wars, he waged war in different places and got captives. And those captives' relatives came with ransoms, with money, to get their relatives released, those captives released. And Caesar didn't pocket that money. Instead, he filled the copper or Rajya Bhandagare. මෙන්න මේ මුදලින් තමයි මිනිස්සු යැපෙන්නේ දැන්. Marc Antony අහනවා මෙන්න මේ නිසාද ඔබ කියන්නේ Caesar ambitious කියලා. මේ මිනිස්සු වෙනිය මුදල් ඉතිරි කරපු නිසාද? තමන්ගේ පොකට් එක පුරව ගන්න නැතුව. The same thing happened in King Oedipus as well. Does he do anything for his own betterment, for his own welfare? Oedipus doesn't do anything for that. He says, I will do anything to help you. He does everything possible. He sacrifices even his life to help Theban citizens. Is it for this you say that Oedipus is a worthless, mean person? Is it for this? So we need to question ourselves, or Sophocles makes us question ourselves. And there, Marc Antony makes the Roman citizens question themselves. When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambitious should be made of stern stuff. Even in King Oedipus we can see Oedipus crying. When Thebans cry, he says that he cries more than they do. Now, does that mean to you that Oedipus is a hard-hearted, a brutish man? Can such a man feel sorry for those citizens, those people? We can see that he has emotions. He can feel sorry for the others. That's why when people cry, he wept. Here too, the same thing happens. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. That's what he questions. Marc Antony here. Yet, එහෙම වුණත් Brutus කියනවා he was ambitious. එහෙම වුණත් අපේ මේ සමාජ තහංචි නීති values standards කියනවා Oedipus මෘග තිරිසන් මිනිහෙක් කියලා. මේ නිසාද මේ අහිංසක හදවතක් මිනිස්සු වෙනින් උණු වෙන හදවතක් තිබීමද අපි ඔහුට මෙච්චර තිරිසන් මෘග මිනිස්සෙක් කියලා කියන්නේ. මෙන්න මේක Sophocles අපිව අපෙම ප්‍රශ්න කරනවා. He makes us question ourselves. There again, Marc Antony makes Roman citizens question themselves. And Brutus is an honorable man. Yes, he says Brutus is an honorable man. Here too, we say that, okay, we respect, we honor, we worship those standards, social-cultural standards, values. You all did see that on the Lupercal, that's a place, I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refused. Was this ambition? That's what Marc Antony asks the Roman citizens. As he says, he 3 times offered crown, kinship to Caesar, but 3 times he refused it. Is that what you say that he is ambitious? Is it for this that you say that he is ambitious? Is he ambitious? ඔහු බලතණ්හාව තියෙනවා නම් ඇයි ඔටුන 3 පාරක් ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කළේ? A similar thing you know that happens in King Oedipus. Oedipus 3 times refuses kinship. You know those 3 times. Once he leaves Corinth. By leaving Corinth, he refuses his kinship. It's not only kinship or crown that he leaves. He leaves his parental love, their affection, his psycho-emotional security, his physical comfort. He becomes, He becomes just a beggar, let's say, a lonely beggar. He leaves everything, not only kinship. Why? Is it for this that you say that, or that you say that he is mean, most worthless man? Is it for this? So we need to question ourselves. And the second one, the second time he refuses kinship, when Corinthian messenger comes with the message that Polybus is dead and now Oedipus can go back to Corinth and become the king. What does he say? My mother is still living there. Until she lives, I cannot go there. For the second time he refuses kinship. So what is the third time that he refuses kinship? You may remember the last scene, just before the last scene, let's say. Just before Laius shepherd comes to the scene, Jocasta asks him not to continue this quest. She asks him to stop it, to stop this quest for his identity. Then he says that it doesn't matter whether my mother turns to be a slave. I want to find her. I want to find my identity, the truth. So, if it turned him to be a slave's son, what would happen to him? He's going to lose his kinship. But does he care of the kinship, the throne. No, for his mother's sake, even though she may turn to be a slave woman, he is willing to accept her rather than the meaningless, worthless crown. Is it for this that you say that he is worthless, he is mean? And then again, okay, now I think you are in a situation to understand the difference. You should be now in a situation to consider your own thoughts, prejudices, preconceptions, negative attitudes to Oedipus. You may be now in a moment to begin to love him. There too, now the Roman citizen should be in a situation to believe what, okay, now he has already, it means Marc Antony has already set the scene to tell them what he wants. Now he says, I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. Okay, he doesn't, as he says, come here to say what Brutus spoke is not true. Yet he has come here to say what he does know, what he knows. Sophocles too now can tell us what he knows about Oedipus, what he has to tell about Oedipus, because now we are willing to accept what Sophocles is going to tell us. And there again, Roman citizens are willing to believe, willing to accept, willing to listen to what Marc Antony is going to tell them. This is how they change our mind. This is how they change our preconceptions. This is how they change our negative attitudes to those people, those two people, those so-called social offenders, those pseudo-social offenders, mean, so-called mean subhuman beings, worthless, meaningless, brutish men. Okay, but you all did love him once. Not without cause. Marc Antony's continuous speech. You all did love him once, not without cause. You loved him once. It's not without a reason that you loved him. You had enough reasons to love him. Then why don't you love him now? Why don't you weep for him? You loved him once, but why don't you weep for the man whom you once loved? What caused you to withdraw? What withholds you? What stops you weeping for him? Here too, now if we assume ourselves as the 5th century Greek spectators, Greek people, we know that we once loved this man because this man is Oedipus. We loved this man once because he is the one who gave us our life back to us. We had no other refuge until he came and relieved us from our calamitous situation, from our burden, from the famine, from the plague. He gave life back to us. We loved him so. Then why don't we love him now? What withholds our love? It's those social prejudices, those misconceptions, the social way of punishing a person for the offense without considering the causes, the reasons, without letting him, the offender, to tell his own side of the story, giving a one-sided judgment. Here too, O judgment, aho vinishya, Marc Antony continues speech, O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, aho vinishya. Oba mruga tirisanun atata patwa ඇත. අපට ඊඩිපස් සම්බන්ධව කියන්න තියෙන්නේ ඒ කතාවම තමයි. මිනිස්සුන්ගේ reasoning power, reasoning හැකියාව, ability to reason out things has left them. අපිට සිතීමේ හැකියාව නැති වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපි මේ මනස්ගාත, අපි එහෙම කියමු. ඇතැම් වෙලාවට අපිට කියන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා මේ මනස්ගාත සමාජ සම්මතයන් විසින් අපි ගිලගෙන තියෙනවා. අපි කිසිම වග විභාගයක් නැතුව ඒවා විශ්වාස කරමින් අහිංසක මිනිස්සුන්ට දඬුවම් දෙනවා. ඒ මිනිස්සුන්ට තමන්ගේ නිදහසට කිසිම කාරණයක් කියන්න ඉඩ නොතබා අපි මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට දඬුවම් දෙනවා. මේ සමාජයේ මිනිස්සු කියන කතා අහලා. සාධාරණය විනිශ්චය කාටද පත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? මෘග තිරිසනුන් අතර පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ කතාව මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි අපි තුල සොෆොක්ලිස් අපි ලව්වා අප තුල මතු කරන්නේ. මේක තමයි මාර්ක් ඇන්ටනි Roman citizens love තුල ඇති කරන්නේ. And men have lost their reason. So this is the climactic scene here. This is the climactic scene. Climax here, and only what is remaining? Just the resolution here. Okay, Mark Antony has already done what he wants. He has raised their anger. He has raised their hatred. Now what is waiting is until they take arms against Brutus and those other brutish men. Here too, Oedipus has done what he wants. He has changed our mindset. He has changed our preconceptions. He has already made us question those socio-cultural values and standards, restrictions and taboos. He has already made us question them. So now we are not in a situation to believe, accept them. We begin to question them. Don't forget that we are 5th century Greek spectators, but I wonder whether they should have done. Okay, now the next one. Okay, I have underlined here with purple the words honorable versus mean, good versus bad become meaningless. They contain socially constructed meaning. This is what I want to tell you. Okay, දැන් මේ කතාව අහනකොට අපි මාර්ක් ඇන්ටනිගේ ස්පීච් එක අහනකොට Roman citizens ලා මේ ඊඩිපස් නාට්‍ය මේක බලනකොට අපිට හිතෙන එක දෙයක් තමයි අන්තිමට මේ වචනවල ඇත්තටම තේරුමක් නැහැ. මේ honorable mean කියන තේරුම, මේ opposite වචන, ප්‍රතිවිරුද්ධ වචන, ගෞරවනීය සහ දුෂ්ට තුච්ඡ කියන වචනවල කිසි තේරුමක් නැහැ. මේවට සමාජයේ විසින් තමයි මේවට meanings දීලා තියෙන්නේ. Okay, they have socially constructed meaning. Therefore they don't have meaning. They give the meaning, they ascribe to them some sort of meaning based on their own values, their preferences. තමන්ට කැමති එකාට ගෞරවණීය නාමය දෙන ගමන් තමන්ට අකමැතිකව තුච්ඡ කියන නාමය දෙනවා. එහෙනම් මේවා සමාජයේ විසින් දෙන මේවට තේරුම් දෙන සමාජය. එහෙනම් මේ සමාජය විසින් දෙන තේරුමක් නැති අරුත්සුන් මේ තේරුම් වචනවලට මේ තේරුම් වලට අපි පිළිගන්නවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි කල්පනා කරනවද තෙවරක් මේ ගැන සලකා බලනවද? එහෙම සලකා බලලා අපි මිනිස්සු ගැන තීන්දුව ගන්නවද? මේක තමයි මාර්ක් ඇන්ටනි Roman citizens ලගින් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. මේක තමයි Sophocles අපෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. හොඳයි, අපි යමු ඊළඟට එකට. මේක මම කතා කරන්නේ. I'm not going to talk about or explain what I have written here. You can see I have already discussed comparing Mark Antony's speech, drawing examples from both Mark Antony's speech and King Oedipus, this intertextual relationship, so you can just go through it. So the plot structure in King Oedipus, very briefly let's do it, in King Oedipus and Shakespeare's Mark Antony's speech. You may wonder as to how you may find a plot structure in Mark Antony's speech, since it is a speech, but I think you need to identify or consider it not simply as a speech, but as a mini drama, because Shakespeare here composes Mark Antony's speech while closely reading King Oedipus and closely following its plot structure. So in a plot structure, you may find certain constituents such as exposition. I have not written here, instead I have just written conflict, in which in this exposition the playwright exposes to us the conflict, the central character's conflict. And then the next constituent, the playwright complicates that central action, or in that central action you may find some sort of conflict, and playwright in complication, he complicates that central action or that conflict, which we identify again as rising action. So in both you may see it, and then he develops it to the climactic level or climax, and then he begins to resolve it, first gradually resolving, and then finally the playwright resolves it. So we find these constituents, the plot structure in both these pieces. Now let's attend to the plot structure in King Oedipus, but let's do it very briefly. Central action in King Oedipus is finding the killer. That is its central actor, Oedipus, conflict, finding who the killer is. First he tries to find the killer outside. That's how Sophocles complicates finding the killer. Because if he suspect himself in the very beginning, it doesn't get complicated because he can very easily, Oedipus can very easily find the killer. But instead, letting him find the killer outside, Sophocles complicates his conflict. And as a result of finding the killer outside, without suspecting his own hands, Oedipus begins to fight with everyone. And it makes the central action of finding the killer more complicated. And then, in this dialogue between Oedipus and Jocasta, for the first time, Oedipus begins to suspect his own hands. Oedipus begins to suspect his own hands and tries to find the killer. He turns inside and tries to find the killer inside. He suspects his own actions. So this is called the one of the crucial turning points. One of the crucial turning points of this drama, King Oedipus. Because now, earlier he wanted to find the killer outside. Now he tries to find the killer inside. So that's why this is called the turning point, because he turns inside and tries to find the killer inside. And then in the next dialogue between Oedipus, Jocasta and Corinthian messenger, because of something that Corinthian messenger says, Oedipus begins to find, instead of the killer, who he is. Now in this moment, the central action, that is finding the killer, either outside or inside, it splits into two. Now there are two central actions. One thing is finding the killer, either inside or outside. The second one, who his real identity is, who he really is. And then here recognition or climax in this drama, Oedipus, we call it recognition because here Oedipus recognizes or finds answer to both his quests, both his questions, who he is and who the real killer is. And then there you could see this calamity, and then resolution in which Oedipus, let's say calamity in which Oedipus blinds himself, Jocasta kills herself, and then resolution in which Oedipus, a hint is given to us that Oedipus would leave the stage. And then let's see the final song by the chorus, in which you find a real solution, real resolution to the problem, or one of the major themes of the drama as well. Okay, now let's turn to Marc Antony's speech. In Marc Antony's speech, the central action, the central conflict you may find in Roman citizens' mind. They are split in between identifying who the honorable people are, who the ambitious people are. So this is the conflict that Shakespeare makes Marc Antony creates in Roman citizens. You can see this in line 1 to 15. Shakespeare uses 15 lines here to set the scene, because it is not easy for Marc Antony to at once tell them that who they are, who they have considered as honorable people are not really honorable, because they have already addressed the people. Those people have already addressed the people and they have convinced them that they are honorable, and Julius Caesar is a dishonest, brutish, ambitious man. So it's not easy. That might be the reason as to why Shakespeare spends 15 lines to set the scene, and then employing Marc Antony from line 16 to 27. He complicates their mindset, their attitudes, their prejudices against Julius Caesar. In this one, so in King Oedipus, you can find the central action splitting into two in the dialogue between Oedipus, Jocasta, and Corinthian messenger. In the middle of the drama, almost close to the climax, close to the recognition, very close to the recognition scene. But here in Marc Antony's speech, it's already, the central action is already split. That's the conflict they have. Their consciousness is split between honorable people, identifying honorable people, and then dishonest people. And then from in lines 28 and 9, you may see the climax or turning point, because by now Marc Antony has set their mind or changed their mind. Now they are in a position, they in the sense Roman citizens now are in a position to identify who the real beasts are, who the real honorable people are. So then you may see thereafter the gradual resolution from line 30 to 31, and then in line 32 to 35 you may see the resolution in which Shakespeare employs Marc Antony to resolve or gives the solution to people's conflict, making him say, "O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beast, and men have lost their reasons." Here people, Roman citizens, should understand that they have lost their reason as a result of listening to these brutes' lies. And then again he says, "O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beast." There is one thing that is really interesting in this speech, because you may see Shakespeare using name symbolism. That name Brutus, it sounds like brutish. You may see Marc Antony repeatedly using the name of Brutus, but at the same time you may see him repeating that modification to Brutus, honorable Brutus. And then you may question whether a brute can become honorable, because this word brutish sounds like Brutus sounds like brutish. You may just sometimes suspect as to whether a brute can be honorable. So likewise, Marc Antony or Shakespeare employs Marc Antony to repeatedly use honorable Brutus, at the same time making him repeat ambitious Caesar. And now in the end, those Roman citizens identify who the real brutes are, who the real honorable people are. So here then, moral villains, moral heroes, people like Brutus and then Casca, they finally become moral villains. Brutus becomes finally brutish beast. And then a moral villain, whom they consider as the moral villain, whom we consider as the moral villain, in the end of his speech becomes a real moral hero. That is what happens in King Oedipus as well. When you go to the theatre, we have this idea of seeing a moral villain in Oedipus, but in the end we can see in Oedipus a real moral hero. In this final slide, let's see how Sophocles resolves our conflict. Also, let's see how convincingly he concludes one of the central themes of the drama. That central theme is irony of life. O Daive Saradama. What you are reading now are the final lines of the drama. It's a song that the chorus sing. You know that the Theban elders perform the role of the chorus. Then it's the Theban elders who sing these final lines. Behold, this was Oedipus, the greatest of men. When the drama begins, you see how Thebans love him, respect him, and rely on his intelligence and what he would do to help them in their problems. He is the most respected, the most loved, the most wanted, and most expected when the drama begins. He held the key to the deepest mysteries, was envied by all his fellow men for his great prosperity. You know what this key is? That's his intelligence. With this key, he opened the door and entered the city of Thebes. You know how he solved the she-witch's riddle and saved the city. Now see what has happened to him. Behold, what a full tide of misfortune swept over his head. බලන්න මේ ඔහුගේ හිස මත වැටී තියෙන මේ දුක් කන්ද. Now he is the least respected, the least wanted, the most mean, the most worthless. Here are the more important lines with which Sophocles resolves our conflict or concludes one of the themes of the drama, that is irony of life. Daive Saradama. Then learn that mortal men must always look to his ending, and none can be called happy until that day when he carries his happiness down to the grave in peace. Until the last moment, when we exhale the last drop of breath, we cannot be certain that we are safe. Something accidental can happen, even in the last moment when we exhale that last drop of breath. ඒ අන්තිම හුස්ම පොද හෙළන මොහොතේ යම් කිසිවක් විය හැකියි. Maybe a bad thought that emerges in that last moment will decide our status in the next birth. We may feel proud of our prosperity, our material richness, textual knowledge, literacy, and intelligence. අපි ඔක්කොම එහෙමයි. However, when we just contemplate, reflect back at the last moment of what we have said and done so far, we may come to know perhaps the stupidest, the meanest, ugliest things that we have done, maybe not knowingly. Now you have one more thing to see while contemplating the all that happened in the drama, that you saw in the drama. Contemplate or imagine what should be this morality or religious concept or religious tradition that haunts behind King Oedipus. Think whether those moral religious concepts should have been so common to the 5th century Greeks, or whether they had been alien to them. If you feel that the religious concept that haunts the drama throughout its performance was alien to them, then see whether it is something, religious concept, the tradition, is something familiar to you. I can give you one clue so that you can guess whose religious concept or religious tradition that haunts behind this drama, this tragedy King Oedipus is. Greek playwrights, including Sophocles, performed their dramas in Greek drama contests. Sophocles won awards for his dramas, but he didn't win any award, at least the third place, for King Oedipus, this greatest tragedy, written and performed ever in the world. It's a wonder why this tragedy that gave birth to several great playwrights such as Shakespeare, Ibsen, Chekhov, Brecht and Miller, and novelists such as Hemingway and Achebe, and psychologists such as Sigmund Freud, did not win any award. Perhaps 5th century Greeks may not have welcomed the new religious moral concepts that King Oedipus was based on. Perhaps those people might not have understood what Sophocles meant.